So I've got a really cute dog just laying in my doorway right now, all looking sad because I'm not paying attention to him. I would turn you to face him, but it would knock down like a lot of my setup right now. So I will just post a picture on the Discord for any of you who would like to see a Mr. Larson laying there all cute and sad. But it makes it very hard to film when he's looking at me like I'm treating him terribly by not petting him. Guys, what do I do? He looks so sad. I guess I'll just let us get on with today's class. Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on the next set of chapters for Magician's Gambit, chapters 6 through 10. I hope you are enjoying the story so far. Let's go ahead and go over the trivia question before we jump into today's class. And I must have been a little bit of a harder question this week because I only had one correct answer. And the correct answer was water by Christian Don't Swim in the River. But I am curious because the question that I asked was, what is the element most common in breaking down or destroying spells? And I had a couple people who answered air, which I think is really interesting because I have never heard of air breaking down spells or ruining spells in any way. Everything that I have read or mythology I've heard, things like that, has been water, whether it's been blessed water, regular water, salt water, running water, some kind of form of water, breaks down, wears down spells, damages spells, breaks them, that kind of stuff. But I haven't heard of air being something that could break down or ruin spells. So for the couple of people who answered as air, I would be really interested to know why you thought it was air or where that came from, just so I can learn along with you on what air does to spells in certain cases and stuff like that. I think that would be really interesting to know about. So if you are one of those people who answered with air, I would really love to hear why that was your answer and what cases you have seen air damaging or breaking spells. So, okay, let's go ahead and get into the class. So let's go ahead and start with our recap as always. We had quite a bit of stuff going on in these 5 chapters. Lots of new things coming to light. So we start off with Belgarath and Pol and the group still in, or still going through that meadow with all the ghosts and stuff like that. And they detour to Mar Amon to talk to Lord Mara, who is a god. Mara refuses to talk to them, refuses to listen to them, and continues to display his grief very loudly. Now, we don't totally know what's happening or why he is grieving, other than that he has mentioned something about the Nedra line. Don't really know what's happening with that, but we do know that he's very angry with the Nedras, and he almost attacks Sinedra because of who she is and however this plays in with his grief. But Garion, as being taken over by the voice or the inner being who is connected to him, goes and steps forward and stops Lord Mara from hurting Sinedra. And they are able to stop him and they are able to leave. So then we have this time jump where it's a week later, and everyone is now allowed to wake up and be themselves and continue the journey. So they continue going on, traveling, and they do end up encountering Brill on opposite sides of the canyon that they're traveling on. And everything is much clearer, and they both understand that they know who each other is at this point, and that Brill is still trying to catch up to them. But then, as they continue forward, they know that one of their mares is pregnant and is about to give birth. So they're trying to get shelter in order for this horse to be able to do a safe birthing. And Garion leads them to a cave that nobody knew about except for him, and is the only person able to open the door. So they take shelter in this cave, and the colt is born, but the colt is born and isn't able to make it. The colt ends up being born alive, but it quickly passes away until Garion comes over and is able to help magically make the colt survive the birthing. And once, a couple days later, they do travel on, and they reach the Vale. And Garion decides that he needs to learn how to control his magic. He does need to actually understand it and know how to use it. So Garion and Belgarath go to Belgarath's tower at the Vale in order to talk about his training and to start it. So yeah, that's where we are at this point. Lots of interesting things building. That recap really doesn't seem like a lot of important things happen, but the main events are what I think are a framework for the deeper things that are happening that we experience in these chapters. It's more of the subtext or the character development that really is progressing a lot in this set of chapters. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is something that we are kind of just starting to see at this point. A little bit at the end of book 2 and a little bit now is we're starting to have a little bit more information and look at the gods. We have now had encounters with 2 different gods. We're hearing a little bit about Aldur as our third god that we kind of know a little bit about. But we have now physically encountered 2 different gods. And it definitely is, at this point, the mythology and the interaction that the gods have with the world is very hands-off. We've seen both gods, though we will compare them in just a moment, but both gods have been very much not wanting to interact with the world too much. They are very much removed from what's going on. They don't really have an understanding of the events that are really taking place in the world per se. They don't know what has transpired beyond wherever they're at. Like Issa is asleep and Mara is stuck in time in a way, creating a place that is just at one time grieving. So obviously we all also know that the gods from the mythology said that they left the world in order to not awake Torak, to not have any interaction with Torak. So they are very much hands-off at this point. They were hands-on at one point, but at this time they are very much hands-off, hands-free, trusting Polgara and Belgarath to kind of run the show on Earth right now. We do know that Aldur or something is calling them to the Vale, and it seems to be that Aldur himself is calling the party to the Vale. And that's where his domain is, where, you know, Belgarath and Polgara learned their powers and used to live when Aldur was on the in the world itself. So we're going to see if he does come into play, if he actually will make a real appearance, or if he won't. But obviously they need to be there for a particular reason, and this is the only time that we have seen any of the gods actually try and take a action in the world, or move them in a way that they would do something that the gods want them to do. So before, they were just plotting their own course, making their own plans, trying to do their best to make the journey successful. You know, there wasn't much planning, nothing specific that was leading them divine-wise. But now Aldur has specifically given a message that has led them to change their course of action and do something different. So we're gonna see if he does make an appearance, if they need to, what they need to go there for. But obviously this is the first interaction that the god actually wants to intervene and have something happen in particular. If we're going to compare Issa and Mara, because these are the two different gods that we have actually seen at this point and interacted with at this point, they are very much opposite on the scale, I feel like. Very different impressions that we've got. Issa has been asleep for a long time, but he wakes up and he's very calm, very collected, even in the face of knowing that his love has died and that the priestess that is in his temple at that moment is not her, it is just one of her descendants, somebody who looks exactly like her or very much like her, and that his real love has died. It doesn't get mad, he doesn't rage, he doesn't, I don't want to say he doesn't mourn because we don't know enough about him to say that he was mourning or not, or that he was very upset or not. But obviously he loved a certain human very, very much. It was his favorite, or loved maybe in a more romantic setting, we're not sure. But even though she has been said that she is gone, he handles the situation very calmly, not really aggravated by anything. He doesn't let his feelings or his emotions get in the way of having Polgara make the decision and for him to go back to sleep, because he feels that that is the safest thing to do with the situation with Torak. So very much also on board with wanting to stop Torak. That's specifically the reason why he goes back to sleep and doesn't deal with the problem himself, is because he doesn't want to show his presence and risk waking Torak or setting off Torak's followers or anything else that might happen with his presence, and goes back to sleep. Now, Mara, on the other hand, is still very much in the world, and he's actually making a commotion in said world, and obviously he's been doing it for a while. He only is affecting his one area, but he's making it so nobody can go through that area because he is just so outraged and so grief-stricken that he is causing problems for travelers going through that area to be able to survive making it to the other side. So he very much has an active role in the world, and it's affecting the world, but even though he's only in his one area, he is making a big commotion to anybody going in that area, in the Maramon city and stuff like that. So he is using his power to reenact the time of his grief. Again, we didn't get enough details to truly understand why or what exactly happened, other than we understand that it has something to do with the Nedra line. And that his hate and his grief is still very much real, and that he's been grieving for a very long time. And in the exact opposite of Issa is Mara has no care in the world for Torak. He really has no care. He doesn't care if he causes Torak to wake up. He doesn't care if Torak does or does not wake up. He doesn't care to help Belgarath or Polgara in the quest of stopping Torak. He doesn't give a crap. All he really wanted was to kill Sinedra just for something that happened from an ancestor, something from the past that she had nothing to do with. He just wants to destroy and to grieve. So very opposite reactions. They have a very cool, calm, emotionless reaction. I wouldn't want to say 100% emotionless because we didn't have enough of an interaction to know. But very much a logical based interaction. And then we have a completely emotional based reaction from a god, and complete opposite priorities. His priority is his grief and what has happened to him, and the injustice that he feels that he has been served, that he cannot correct. And then we have Issa, who is just trying to help the efforts. Is he woke enough to make a decision to tell Polgara what she could or could not do at the call of the priestess, but then goes back to sleep and understands that, the view of everything is bigger, and that he must take his best role by going back to sleep and not alerting anybody to his presence on Earth. So, two very different interactions. We possibly might have a third interaction coming up from Aldur. We'll have to find out. But Aldur is the first god to actually input himself, even if it wasn't even on the Earth or on the world, but just diverting the group to going to the Veil. And we're going to still have to find out what purpose that is, other than, obviously training Garion, because the fact is that we can already see that they plan to train Garion there in the Veil, and they've already started that at the end of the set of chapters, is trying to teach him how magic is used and what the safest way to use it is. So we should keep an eye on how the gods' interactions are going to come in the future, if they will come in the future, if that's our only look at it. But we get a little bit of the mythology in the beginning of each of the books, but now we've had a little bit more of an interaction with them personally in the story, and we will continue to see if they progress through the books and how they take their role in this world. If it changes, if they're still going to be hands off, if they're going to be all in, if they're for Torak, against Torak. Because by the mythology, we figured that all of them were against Torak, but now we've seen Mara, who really doesn't care about Torak and just wants to focus on his own problems and what he sees as important. So we are going to continue to see what happens with that. So next, I want to go ahead and talk about Garion, or Belgarath, as he is slowly starting to become. I think this set of 5 chapters is actually very important for Garion and his character development. I think we started to see it a little bit in the first 5 chapters, but now we are really starting to see it in these 5 chapters. He is becoming much more somber. He's becoming much more... let me change that. He's becoming less high-strung is what I'm wanting to say. He's becoming much more of a thinker instead of just a do-it or just a reactor, I guess you could say. He's definitely not at the same level with, even interacting with Sinedra. The whole point of that fight that they have is him deciding this fight is wanted, this fight is going to come about whether I like it or not, so let me just get it over with. It wasn't that he got indignant and started the fight. It wasn't that he just wanted to fight with her because he was irritated. It wasn't anything like his usual reactions where she said something and so he said something or anything like that. It was more of a just... he didn't want to have the fight, but he realized it was coming and just wanted to get it over with, and so just went along with it, but didn't really have the urge to fight with her. So I think that we're really seeing him really starting to be more introspective, really maturing at this point, and coming to terms with the fact that everything Polgara has said, everything Belgarath has said, is internalizing. And he's coming to terms with the fact that they're right, that he can't just stop doing magic, that he has to learn how to control the magic, that he can't just ignore this problem anymore, and that it is now a part of him. So I really feel like he's starting to truly grow up in these pages and really starting to get some maturity developing for him and his character. I think that this is really a turning point for him. He's acknowledged that he needs to learn about magic and has now actively asked for help and is letting Belgarath explain things to him. So it's not that he just talked about it, or it's not that he just said, okay, I need to learn about it, but isn't doing anything about it. He is actively stepping up to the plate and saying, hey, I need help, you're right. I need to learn about this magic. I need to know how to control it. This is something that's important. Can you help me and can you teach me? And is letting Belgarath do that. Oh, we now have another dog over here. Hi, Kodabeo. Hi. Hi, did you come to visit me? Hi, Code. Are you happy? Okay. I have to film though. I have to finish filming. I guess we're taking a short dog break. Hi. Okay, the dog recess is over, so let's continue. As I was saying about Garion, is just that he has decided that he's going to learn about magic, and that is a really big change, I feel like, because in this whole time that he's known that he's had magic, ever since he burned Ashrak, he has been fighting tooth and nail against it, like just wanting to forget that it even exists. Even though he has used it, every single time he uses it, he just wants to get rid of it. He just wants to not be able to do it. I think a lot of it is he didn't want to have the responsibility of it on his shoulders. And because he knows that having magic is a big responsibility, and he didn't want to face that and didn't want to have to grow up and to be like Polgara and to be like Belgarath. I think he admires them and understands that they make tough choices that he didn't really want to be in charge of making. He liked that he could just argue against whatever he didn't like and act like it's somebody else's fault that he has problems. But now he's finally accepting that he has to become an adult and he has to learn how to control these powers and that there's no turning back now. So it has really affected him in a lot of ways. It's affected him in the fact that he's taking the responsibility to learn about magic. He is asking questions. He is doing it in a very good, calm, mature way, really absorbing what Belgarath is telling him so far. And he is changing with Sinedra and the fact that he's not so quick to argue and to judge and to get hot-headed about things. And just that he's become much more introspective in a way. He's talking to the voice, learning about what the voice is and why he is in his head. He's very mature about the cave. Didn't, treat it like, oh man, I'm so cool. I have this cave and I know about this cave and I can do these extra things, which I think previously he might have acted that way. But instead he's very calm, cool, collected. He shows them to the cave. He opens the cave. He calmly does what he feels that he needs to with that cult. And though he's not really so fond of the cult being so loving toward him, I will say that is one place that he has not quite matured 100%, is he doesn't know how to take care of a young cult that adores him. But he does, very maturely take that cult, understands that what he's doing, and then calmly closes the door and doesn't, try and make a big deal out of anything or act like he's cool or like that he is trying to make a fit over, why does he know these things? Nothing like that. He really is calm, cool, and collected about it all. And next is about the cave. So we see that he's at this turning point. We see that he's maturing and he's making these steps for his life and for his attitude. But let's go ahead and talk about the cave and how that relates to him as well. It is something that he instinctively knew about, as if he'd always known it and just didn't know he knew it until he needed the knowledge. But he knew about it and he's the only one that could operate the door. So that's very interesting, something that we now only have questions about, not answers to at this point. But then the cave and being there seems to be very important, that timing happened the way it did. They go into the cave, and then the cave, in a way, tells Garion exactly what to do for the cult and tells him in some kind of subconscious level that he's going to be able to bring this cult back to life. So it seems that this is a very monumental moment. Something very important is happening, that this cult was brought back from Garion's magic, and that it has that spot that he rubbed that turned white because of his powers. So the cave told him, bring this cult back to life, and that you can do it, and this is how, very subconsciously. And he did it, and this cult understands that he gave him life and is marked by him. So it seems like the cave, aka the gods, because it's the gods' meeting place. It's a very sacred place, something that's only known by a very small few and should only be able to be opened by the gods, according to Belgarath. And yet he was given permission to go into that cave to save that cult and to have that cult linked to him. So it seems that the gods are now interacting in another way, I guess you could say, with Garion, is that they have a special interest in Garion and in that cult being Garion's, maybe. It seems like that is the impression that we are given. Obviously, it is not for sure that the gods had any interaction, but it does seem very interesting that Belgarath mentions that that was where the gods used to meet, and that Garion's the only one that could lead them in or out of there, or to even know where it was located. So then some way the cave led him to try and bring back the cult to life. So it's all very interesting, and it seems that maybe this is a sign that the gods are interacting with Garion and leading him to what they need him to do. And somehow this cult, or this horse, is going to be important for Garion to have. Okay, now let's talk about Belgarath. So we've kind of seen a turning point for Garion, and now we're also starting to have some more insight for Belgarath. Belgarath, I feel like, a little bit for Aunt Pole as well, but Belgarath has been, for me, the biggest mystery of the bunch so far. He's very closed-lipped. He's very much he focuses basically on the mission, and he's all about the mission of getting the orb back and being very knowledgeable about the orb, very much, taking things in his own hands on how they're going about it and where they're going. But we don't really know Belgarath very well, personally. In my opinion, I don't feel like I know much about him other than that Aldur brought him up and that he had a hard childhood. We'd seen those little peeks before, which we talked about before. And that he loved his daughter that passed away very, very long time ago, and loved his wife. We don't know anything about his wife. We don't know really anything about what happened between him and his daughter after she got married, only that they both, Belgarath and Pole, were sad about it. We don't really know if they had more of a relationship after that, or if it, how it affected him. We don't really know much about anything about Belgarath. But now we're starting to see a little bit more of a peek into him and his past, and seeing more vulnerability. He is very clearly still in pain over the loss of his wife and daughter. He still has the chair that his wife used to sit in. And in many ways, he still seems like he's lost in his own tower. Like, he sees his things, he sees his wife's chair, he understands what the purpose was originally for these items that he had, that he was so excited about and so interested in, but now it's like he's lost his connection to those items. He's lost the reason that he was so excited about discovering the world and figuring out the reasons to why things existed. He just seems like he almost doesn't know what to do with himself because his past is in his tower, and he doesn't know how to interact with it anymore. So we can see that vulnerability of how much he is still lost in his own pain that happened so many years ago, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. But he's still just, in the face of it, just still lost and still hurting over it. So we really see a very big vulnerability that we haven't seen much of at this point to Belgarath, and really starting to know a little bit more about who he is and the hardships that he's had in his life. We even find out that he is so interested in the world. I mean, he used to study it. He used to study the whys of the world. Why mountains are mountains and why the sky is blue, and that kind of studying of the world. He believes that everything has a why and everything has a reason as to why things are. But he's no longer able to research it, or has lost his drive to research it at this point. And he had contraptions that he had made in order to study it. So in a way, he is the curiosity of the world was really big for him, and now has slipped away, and he's uncomfortable almost in the face of it. So again, we see that uncomfortable sense of who he was and what he was interested in before. And we really see once again, because we've heard this story before, that he moved a boulder and that was why he became a sorcerer. Like, that was what brought him his power. But moving that boulder, we see now that we're at his tower and that a boulder is his door for his tower. That is a very defining moment for Belgarath. It is something that he himself sees as like monumental for him. That is like the solid base of who Belgarath is the moment he moved that boulder, he became a sorcerer. And becoming a sorcerer and his interaction with Aldur and his relationship with Aldur is very important to him. We can see that even though he hasn't said it, but we can tell by the way he talks about him and the way he mentions the past with him that is something very, very important to him. That moment is a defining moment in his life for who he is as a person. So especially when we see the tower and you see that boulder, and he talks about it again, that how he became so angry that he couldn't move this boulder, that he just moved it with his mind and decided that strength he had in his mind was going to be enough to physically interact with the world. That is a very defining moment for him. That makes him who he is in many ways in his mind. So it's very interesting because this is the one story that we've heard about a couple of times already from him. And then we see it as the door, and he talks about it again and talks about it in relationship to how Garion can learn to focus his magic and how he can be defined as with his first moments of doing magic, which we find out was not really, which isn't a surprise, but not really when he burns Asherak. He was doing magic before, like when he stopped the guy who was going crazy, and we kind of knew that Polgara was lying about her being the one to stop the guy, when really we could tell it was Garion. So we see how that first moment is a defining moment for him, and we see how Garion sees the burning of Asherak as his defining moment, and so he uses the boulder defining moment to help Garion understand his defining moment and what the possibilities hold for him for the future, because they are very, very different beginnings to using magic. Okay, so those are all the main things I wanted to talk about for this particular set of chapters. If I missed anything, if you want me to talk about anything else, any questions, concerns, comments, whatever, go ahead and leave those down below for me. I would be happy to chat with you and discuss a little bit more these set of chapters and what you think is going on in them. But to wrap us up, I have a little bit of a bigger nitty-gritty section. I've got 4 different things, and one of it I think I want to read a little bit from here because I think it's just important. So let's start with that one, the one that I would like to read a bit from. And that is something that I think is very important to keep in mind, as well as just a really good moment in this set of chapters, is that Dernick and Mandarellen exchange that exchange that they have about fear and the feeling of being afraid, I think is a very important moment for Mandarellen as a character, as well as just really important, really interesting moment to how Dernick describes it and is trying to help his friend out. So of course Mandarellen is super concerned. This is for my volume, page 91. He's still just distraught about feeling fear and the fear of the fear coming back. And he says that he can't, that Dernick cannot understand him because he hasn't felt it. And Dernick says, "Your stomach tightened up," Dernick told him. "Your mouth was dry and your heart felt as if someone had his fist clamped around it." Mandarellen blinked. "It's happened to me so often that I know exactly how it feels." Thou art among the bravest men I have ever known." Dernick smiled wearily. "I'm an ordinary man, Mandarellen," he said. "Ordinary men live in fear all the time. Didn't you know that? We're afraid of the weather, we're afraid of powerful men, we're afraid of the night and the monsters that lurk in the dark, we're afraid of going old and of dying. Sometimes we're even afraid of living. Ordinary men are afraid almost every minute of their lives. How can you bear it? Do we have any choice? Fear is a part of life, Mandarellen, and it's the only life we have. You'll get used to it. After you've put it on every morning, like an old tunic, you won't even notice it anymore. Sometimes laughing at it helps a little." So, I just think it's a very powerful moment, especially as Dernick says, ordinary men or ordinary people do live in fear a lot. They do have fear is a natural part of life. And I just felt like that was just a super amazing moment for Mandarellen to hear, for him to understand, especially since he has never felt fear other than this one time, and it's a new portion to his life. But just as somebody who is an ordinary person and has experienced fear, to listen to Dernick talk about fear, I felt like was just a really prominent moment, something that just sticks with you. It's very powerful in my opinion. I'd love to hear what you think of that moment, if you liked that moment, if you feel like it's powerful, if you don't like it, if you think that it wasn't saying very much, I'd love to hear that too. I am always interested in your opinions and what you think about it. But that was something that really stuck out to me, and it's something that I think could possibly come up in the future, in the fact that Mandarellen has now been given this advice and is now given this perspective, and understanding that fear is a common thing. So we will see how that interaction helped him in the future, if he will keep feeling the fear, if he will feel better about the fear, if it will help him deal with the fear. We're gonna see if Dernick was able to help him with that explanation. Next is the tree, the oldest living thing in existence, the tree that has been there since the world was created and will be there until the day that the world dies. It was very prominent, very stuck out a lot to me as something important, a very interesting symbol, as well as it made me think of, as somebody who likes to listen and research and know about mythology and stuff like that. I think mythology is very interesting. A lot of cultures have a tree of life symbol in their mythologies and so it made me think of that connection of the tree of life mythology, that if that tree went down, then the world would go down. So I felt like that tree was very interesting, very poignant portion. I just wanted to mention it to see what your guys' thoughts about that tree was, and Sinedra's interaction with that tree and how the tree really liked her. So I just would be interested to know what you guys thought of that tree. And if anybody else out there, if you guys are interested in mythology and know about mythology, if you made that same connection with the tree of life symbolism. Next, I would like to mention is just the word and the will. Of course, we've heard about this a little bit before now, and we are continuing to know more about it as Garion is now going to be getting lessons and is talking more to Belgarath about what that actually completely means in terms of doing magic. But it's very interesting that we are now learning more and more, and I'm assuming we're going to be continuing learning even more and more. But just the fact that the word and the will gives sorcerers and sorceresses a way of doing magic, but you cannot unmake anything, because if you try to unmake something, you will unmake yourself. It will turn inward and destroy you instead of what you wanted to destroy. So I think that that is a new addition or a new complication of magic that I think is very interesting, and something that we should keep in mind, especially since Garion has been twice now on the very cusp of doing that. He's been on the very, very verge of being on the line of unmaking something. So he has given the burning of Asherak, where he killed somebody with fire, but he was kind of wanting to, unmake him, get rid of him, have him not exist. And then we have the opposite end of that line, where he is trying to give life to something, which is very hard and can be very dangerous to do as well. So yes, the giving the life is like not unmaking something, but he's trying to do the opposite of kind of is making something, trying to bring the soul to life. And Garion mentions that that is also a very hard line to walk. Trying to bring back the dead, as well as trying to kill something and to unmake it and make it not applicable. So would really like to know your thoughts about that, and to keep it in mind as we continue going forward and seeing if this training will help Garion not skirt the line so much of what he almost does. Then last but not least, the concept for magic of that Belgarath gives Garion is the can versus the should. Can you do something versus should you do something? And that kind of almost being a moral question, but it's an important concept for magic users to know, to understand. Of course, that applies to a lot of things, and kind of power, any kind of abilities, like, even Dernick or Barak or anybody else who can fight and kill someone. Well, they can kill someone. Should they kill someone is the question. But this is even more compounded with magic, and it is a question that I'm assuming Belgarath and Polgara ask all the time is, not can we, do this magical thing, but should we do this magical thing? And what will be the repercussions of doing it? And how will that affect others around us? So I think that's a very important concept, especially for coming up with, moving forward with more magic and Garion being able to do magic. So we're going to continue to see if Garion again struggles with that, if he embraces that, and how that concept of can versus should continues to apply moving forward. Okay, that is the end of today's class. That was everything I thought was important to talk about. As always, please let me know what you think, or anything that you feel I missed or want to talk about more. I would be happy to hear from you. Next class is going to be 11 through 15, chapters 11 through 15. Pages 120 through 172 for this version, at least. Those are the pages for this particular rendition. Okay, so if you would like to get a hold of me, you are welcome to leave a comment down below, and I would love, like I said, to have a discussion with you. You are also welcome to reach out to me on Twitter, which is at fantasyfiction1, or you're welcome to reach me at Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1. You are also welcome to join the Discord and chat with me and other fantasy fiction fanatics who are already chatting over there about things that are fantasy related and not fantasy related, but we would love to have you and love to talk with you about anything and everything and have a great time. So you are welcome to reach out on there and have a discussion. I am on there as well if you'd like to reach me, so I'd be happy to see you on there. The link is down below in the description if you'd like to join. Also, if you want more content from me, you are welcome to go over to the blog, which is fantasyfictionfanatics.net. I've got a whole bunch of stuff over there, book reviews, book suggestions, a little bit more personal things about me, my thoughts and feelings on different fantasy topics, writing topics, all kinds of things. Film fantasy stuff as well over there. So anything that you'd like to see, if I have it, go ahead and check out over there, as well as that's where the trivia question is. For desktop, it's going to be on the right hand side. You'll just have to scroll down just a little bit to find it. On mobile, you'll have to scroll almost all the way down in order to find the trivia question. We would be happy to have you join in on playing the game as well. And thanks to everybody who already participates and answers every week. I do appreciate you playing the game with me. It is a whole lot of fun for me, and I hope that you are enjoying it as well. Yeah, I think that's everything. I will go ahead and see you in the next class, and until then, have a great week. Bye.